One fine day you wake up and suddenly realize that everything you have been taught about good and evil, about heaven and hell, is part of a carefully constructed narrative. What if this story, so familiar, was shaped to limit our understanding and our search for the unknown? What if Lucifer, so long associated with absolute evil, was not actually an entity of darkness, but rather a symbol of freedom, of an unwavering search for forbidden truths? Why has a figure that originally meant bringer of light become synonymous with darkness and damnation? There is something deep and powerful hidden beneath this myth, something that early religious authorities may have wanted to keep from our reach. When investigating the true essence of Lucifer, we discover a figure that raises uncomfortable questions. What has been hidden from us? What ancient knowledge was condemned to oblivion so that certain institutions maintained control over our understanding? Today, we open a long-closed door, beginning a journey to discover what it truly means to challenge the unknown and embrace knowledge that has been banished. In ancient times, the name Lucifer was very different from what we imagine today. It represented the morning star, that singular glow that announced the sunrise, symbolizing hope, renewal, and the beginning of a new day. In ancient cultures, including Roman mythology, Lucifer was associated with the planet Venus, which appeared before dawn, being seen as the messenger of light. In this context, Lucifer was not a feared figure. Rather, it was seen as a bringer of enlightenment, a sign that the darkness of night was dissipating. It represented the search for knowledge, the courage to bring knowledge to the world, challenging the shadows of ignorance. This symbolism, however, began to change drastically with the emergence and consolidation of Christianity. As the new religion gained strength and sought to establish itself as the only spiritual truth, its leaders realized the need to create a clear division between good and evil. To unify a diverse and often divided population, the Church needed to construct a narrative that positioned the divine and the profane at opposite poles, giving the Christian faith the role of guardian of the light and the path of salvation. In this process, figures and symbols that were not previously associated with evil began to be reformulated to serve this new power structure. It was in this context that Lucifer, previously the messenger of light, began to be reimagined as the Prince of Darkness. In the construction of this new narrative, he was associated with pride and rebellion, transforming himself into the opposite of the divine. The Church adapted the myth of Lucifer to its need to reinforce the duality between light and darkness, between heaven and hell, making him an example of what everyone should avoid: the temptation to seek knowledge and power on one's own, without divine intermediation. Thus, Lucifer, who once brought light to the world, became a warning to the faithful that questioning authority and pursuing knowledge were dangerous paths leading to ruin. This redefinition was more than symbolic. It was a strategy that allowed the Church to consolidate its dominance over the spiritual narrative, portraying itself as the only safe path to salvation. As Christianity spread and became the official religion of the Roman Empire, this new image of Lucifer helped to drive away the masses' curiosity and desire to know, leading them to a role of obedience and submission. In this way, questioning the status quo or seeking an understanding outside of established doctrines came to be interpreted as rebellion and heresy. This transformation of Lucifer served to solidify a power structure where knowledge was not only centralized but also tightly controlled. Everything that could threaten this structure was excluded or remodeled, and Lucifer, as a symbol of autonomy and the search for the unknown, became the perfect enemy to sustain the Church's dominance and authority over spirituality. Instead of a guide in the darkness, Lucifer became an example of what happens to those who dare to defy the limits imposed by a supreme authority. With the emergence of Christianity and its expansion throughout the Roman Empire, the emerging religion was faced with a complex and diverse cultural reality. Rome, with its wealth of gods, myths, and philosophies, was a center of religious plurality where each group had its own way of seeing the spiritual world. This multiple belief environment posed a challenge to early Christian leaders who sought to establish Christianity as the only legitimate faith. There was an urgent need to unite people under a single system of values and beliefs, something that would strengthen the authority of the new religion and ensure its influence in the empire. How many times have you questioned what we were taught about good and evil, as if something was subtly hidden in the path of our understanding? This restlessness is no coincidence. It is a sign that there is much more beneath the surface of traditional doctrines. What if there was a way to explore this without restrictions, to access wisdom that has been hidden until now? The ebook, The Forbidden Name of Jesus, offers a window into these truths preserved in the shadows of time. As a gift, it is available to you in the first pinned comment. Don't miss the chance to delve into this unique and liberating knowledge. To achieve this unity, the Church needed to create a clear division between good and evil, establishing Christianity as the only safe path and condemning all other philosophies as spiritual threats. In this process, symbols and figures were adapted and reinterpreted to reinforce the narrative of divine power against the forces of chaos and disorder. Lucifer, once associated with light and knowledge, became a central figure in this transformation. His name, once linked to the brightness of the morning star, began to carry dark connotations, reflecting the Church's struggle to differentiate the sacred from the profane and to distance the faithful from any form of questioning or independent thought. As the Church grew in power, especially with the support of emperors like Constantine, the figure of Lucifer was increasingly associated with traits of pride and disobedience. This process of reinterpretation was gradual but intentional, cementing Lucifer as a symbol of that which challenged divine authority. Over time, he came to be known as Satan, an opponent of absolute good, and the personification of everything that was contrary to the order established by the Church. By uniting Lucifer with this new concept of malignancy, Christianity was able to use his name to represent what was most dangerous: the temptation to seek knowledge on one's own, a path that directly challenged the need for spiritual intermediation offered by the Church. This transformation served to consolidate the authority of the Church at all levels of spiritual and social life. Any idea that encouraged curiosity or the desire to question doctrines came to be seen as an echo of Lucifer's sin itself, an expression of reprehensible pride. This plot of rebellion and fall perfectly suited the objectives of centralizing power in the hands of the Church, which presented itself as the only reliable source of spiritual guidance. This new narrative not only demeaned Lucifer, but also kept the masses in a state of obedience and fear. The fear of falling into the same mistake of challenging the divine was constantly reinforced, creating an environment of control where the unknown was viewed with suspicion and knowledge outside Christian doctrines was dangerous. In this way, Lucifer's story became a powerful tool, projecting onto him the weight of a choice that symbolized his own rejection of the light offered by the Church. As Christianity became a dominant religion, this transformation of Lucifer into Satan reinforced the need for submission and conformity for those seeking salvation, removing them from any impulse to investigate or question what they were taught. The concept of the Book of Lucifer emerges as a central point for those who believe that true knowledge has been suppressed throughout history. This book, often described as a collection of teachings on the hidden nature of the universe, is seen as a key to understanding profound truths that have been deliberately hidden by the Church. For some scholars and esotericists, the Book of Lucifer represents wisdom that questions traditional explanations and goes beyond established doctrines, offering a glimpse of spiritual and existential realities that defy convention. It is believed that this forbidden knowledge addressed themes such as inner power, human potential, and the ability to access universal truths without the intermediation of religious institutions. The Church, aware of the potential impact of such ideas, reportedly took steps to ban the book and label it heretical, a direct threat to its authority. The simple existence of a book that defended self-knowledge and the search for answers outside the limits imposed by Christian doctrine represented a danger that the institution could not ignore. If people had the freedom to seek their own truths, questioning what they were taught, the Church's power over society's spiritual and moral narrative could be weakened. The Book of Lucifer, therefore, was classified as a dangerous object, the reading of which was seen as an act of disobedience and rebellion. The search for hidden knowledge is one step away. Few will still have the chance to access the forbidden name of Jesus. Enjoy it while it's still available. The book's ban also served as a clear warning. It was not enough to simply follow the Christian faith. It was necessary to reject any idea or knowledge that could in any way weaken the centrality of the Church. This control over knowledge was part of a larger strategy to limit access to knowledge that encouraged spiritual and intellectual autonomy. The knowledge that was said to be contained in the Book of Lucifer was not common knowledge, but rather a call to reflection, autonomy, and the search for what existed beyond appearances. He approached understanding the universe as something vast and accessible, a knowledge that each person could explore and, through it, achieve a state of enlightenment. This vision of individual enlightenment was a direct threat to the role of spiritual mediator that the Church proposed to play. If each person could, on their own, achieve a deep understanding of spiritual issues, the Church's role as guide and guardian of truth would lose its meaning. The Book of Lucifer, in this context, not only invited the search for knowledge, but promoted the idea that true understanding was not limited to official interpretations. He challenged the monopoly of sacred knowledge, encouraging people to question and deeply explore the essence of their existence and the universe. By placing the power of knowledge in the hands of individuals, the Book of Lucifer was seen as encouraging independence and critical thinking. The Church feared that if this book gained popularity, it might inspire a generation of seekers who would reject blind obedience and choose to forge their own path in search of deeper truths. By condemning the book, the Church tried to preserve its authority and keep interpretations of the divine under its control. In the constructed narrative, the book came to be seen as a dangerous temptation, a shortcut to perdition that threatened not only individual salvation, but also the balance of spiritual power in society. The Inquisition was one of the darkest periods in religious history, marked by rigid repression of any idea that could threaten the Church's dominance over knowledge and faith. Beginning in the 12th century and lasting for centuries, the inquisitorial movement's main objective was to identify and eradicate heresies, severely punishing those who dared to question the doctrines and power of the Church. The Inquisition not only fought opposing ideologies, but acted as a control force, ensuring that knowledge was centralized and kept in the hands of ecclesiastical authorities. Books and texts considered subversive were confiscated and burned, and ideas that did not align with Christian teachings were systematically excluded. An emblematic figure of this period is Giordano Bruno, a philosopher and astronomer who challenged the dominant worldview. Bruno believed that the universe was infinite and populated by countless other worlds, a view that directly confronted the Church's conception of divine creation and humanity's place in the cosmos. He also advocated a freer spirituality, which valued individual understanding and rejected dependence on religious intermediaries. For the Church, these ideas were a threat, as they not only questioned established doctrine, but also encouraged independent thinking and the search for knowledge beyond imposed limits. Bruno's refusal to submit to traditional beliefs led him to a tragic fate. After years of persecution and a long trial, he was sentenced to death by the Inquisition and burned in a public square in 1600. His execution served as a warning to others. Challenging the Church and its doctrines could have fatal consequences. Bruno's case is a clear example of how the Inquisition sought not only to repress, but also to eliminate any trace of thoughts considered heretical. He became a martyr for intellectual freedom, a symbol of the price paid by those who dared to question established truths. Another example is Michael Servetus, a doctor and theologian who challenged the doctrine of the Trinity, defending a conception of God that was, for the time, revolutionary. Like Bruno, Servetus believed that faith could be lived in a more personal and direct way, without the need for an institution as an intermediary between the individual and the divine. His ideas were seen as a threat by both the Catholic Church and the emerging Protestant Reformation, and he was eventually sentenced to death. In 1553, Servetus was executed, and his death reinforced the idea that any attempt to deviate from official teachings would be punished in an exemplary manner. Don't miss this rare opportunity to discover what has always been hidden: the forbidden name of Jesus. It's affordable now, but there are few units left. The truth awaits you. During the Inquisition, even scientists and scholars from non-religious areas were persecuted. Galileo Galilei's heliocentric theory, for example, which placed the Sun at the center of the solar system instead of the Earth, was also considered an affront to biblical teachings. Although Galileo escaped capital punishment, he was forced to disown his discoveries and spent the remainder of his life under house arrest. His punishment demonstrated the Church's resistance to accepting advances that could weaken its interpretation of the Scriptures, placing strict limits on scientific knowledge and condemning everything that could be seen as a threat to its control over the truth. The Inquisition was not only a battle against knowledge, but also an attempt to preserve the Church's spiritual monopoly by suppressing any worldview that did not meet its approval. This dark period shows how fear of knowledge and freedom of thought was a constant in the Church's control strategy, a means of ensuring that the masses remained dependent on religious guidance and authority. The flames that consumed Bruno and Servetus were, symbolically, the same ones that tried to extinguish the light of human curiosity, keeping knowledge restricted to what the Church considered safe and convenient for its position of power. In the 19th century, German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche profoundly challenged Christian morality and the traditional view of life and the universe. For Nietzsche, the Christian values of humility, obedience, and submission did not elevate human beings, but limited them. He saw Christian morality as a force that suppressed true human potential, keeping people in a state of dependence and resignation. In his famous phrase, "God is dead," Nietzsche was not literally stating the death of a divine entity, but rather the loss of influence of traditional religious beliefs on modern society. He understood this symbolic death as an opportunity for individuals to take responsibility for creating their own meaning and values, free from the restrictions imposed by religious institutions. Nietzsche's philosophy emphasized the concept of individual overcoming and the search for self-knowledge as paths to achieving true greatness. He defended the idea of the Superman, Übermensch, a being who, freed from the shackles of conventional morality, could create his own morality and follow his own path. Instead of passively accepting established values, this new being would have the courage to question them, reinventing himself and finding meaning in his own existence. This vision of personal autonomy and transcendence became a powerful reference for those seeking an alternative path to that of traditional religion, and influenced a series of philosophical and spiritual movements. Decades later, in the 1960s, thinker Anton LaVey founded the Church of Satan in the United States, a movement that, although controversial, did not worship evil or Satan himself as a deity, but rather as a symbol of rebellion, individualism, and rejection of the norms imposed by Christian society. Inspired by Nietzsche's critique of Christianity, LaVey developed a philosophy centered on the power of the individual, freedom of choice, and self-sufficiency. LaVey's Satanism promoted the idea that each person is responsible for their own life, and that the search for pleasure, satisfaction, and personal fulfillment should not be considered a sin or something negative. The Church of Satan directly challenged Christian morality, valuing aspects such as pride, selfishness, and physical pleasure, elements traditionally condemned by Christian doctrine as sinful. For LaVey, these were natural human traits that should be accepted and celebrated, not repressed. Instead of submission and humility, modern Satanism encouraged self-knowledge, acceptance of one's nature, and courageously confronting one's desires. This vision, which places the human being at the center of their own existence, echoed Nietzsche's call for people to take control of their own lives, free from the influence of dogmas that limited their achievement. For those who want to see beyond, the forbidden name of Jesus brings answers long forgotten. Get yours while there are still some copies left. Movements like LaVey's also address the issue of guilt, an emotion that, in their view, institutionalized religion used to control the masses. The Church of Satan viewed guilt as a tool of repression that prevented people from seeking happiness and fulfilling their desires. By rejecting the idea of guilt, LaVey encouraged his followers to embrace their wills and seek the freedom to be who they truly are, without fear of judgment or divine punishment. This focus on extreme individualism and the search for emotional and spiritual freedom represented a break with centuries of spiritual control imposed by Christian morality. In this context, Nietzsche and LaVey became symbols of a new way of seeing the world, one that challenged the moral structure imposed by the Church and celebrated the autonomy of the individual. Modern Satanism, therefore, is not about worshipping evil, but about questioning norms, rejecting the bonds of repression, and valuing each person's ability to define their own destiny. By reinterpreting the symbol of Satan, LaVey created a movement that, although provocative, sought to give voice to the human desire to break free from religious expectations and live according to a self-created morality. This movement of individual emancipation and rupture with traditional morality also reflected the spirit of Nietzsche, who saw independence of thought and the courage to challenge the status quo as the path to true freedom. Thus, both the German philosopher and the founder of the Church of Satan represent views that oppose the doctrine of submission and the condemnation of the natural impulses of the human being, proposing a life where power resides in the individual himself and not in a divine authority. Lucifer, reimagined as an archetype of enlightenment and resistance, takes on a meaning that goes beyond the simple personification of evil. Instead of a symbol of darkness, it represents the courage to question what is imposed and the determination to seek knowledge, even if prohibited. This figure, who challenges established norms, echoes Gnostic philosophy, which also defended the idea that true enlightenment cannot be achieved through rigid institutions or dogmas, but rather through personal exploration and the revelation of hidden truths. For the Gnostics, knowledge, or gnosis, was a liberating force that allowed each person to escape the illusions of material reality and the limitations imposed by religious authority. This understanding resonates with the symbolism of Lucifer, which inspires those who dare to see beyond appearances and who reject blind obedience. Thus it becomes a powerful metaphor for the incessant search for wisdom and spiritual freedom, encouraging reflection on the power of the individual to build their own path of discovery and autonomy. If you enjoyed this exploration of occult symbolism and forbidden truths, subscribe to the channel to continue discovering content that challenges conventional narratives. Join us on this journey of knowledge, and don't forget to activate the bell so you don't miss any updates. Until the next video,